They treat you terribly, but that one unpredictable moment of kindness makes it all worthwhile. Why is the occasional flash of affection more powerful than months of abuse? This is the dark psychological paradox of intermittent reinforcement, the reward pattern that makes toxic relationships addictive.
That question right there, it gets to the heart of a really confusing and painful experience. It feels completely illogical, right? How can something so random, so unreliable create a bond that feels impossible to break? And a lot of us, we internalize that confusion. We think it's some kind of personal failing, that we're weak, or that something's just wrong with us. But I'm here to tell you, it isn't about you. It's about a very specific and incredibly powerful psychological principle at play.
What we're actually talking about is a well-documented, scientifically understood mechanism. The official term for it is intermittent reinforcement. And believe me, it's one of the most powerful tools of psychological conditioning out there. Understanding this isn't just some academic exercise. This isn't a story about love or about weakness. It's a story about brain chemistry and behavioral science being used as a weapon. And to figure out how to break free, we first have to understand exactly how it works.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to break this mechanism down piece by piece. First, we'll look at the conditioning schedule itself, the science behind the tactic. Then we'll dive into the neuroscience, what I call the dopamine slot machine, to see exactly how your brain gets hooked. After that, we'll dissect the conflicting psychologies at play, the opposing motives. And most importantly, we're going to lay out a clear strategic path for how to break the cycle. And finally, we'll get to the absolute core truth here. Winning means refusing to play the game in the first place.
All right, first things first. We need to pull this whole thing out of the realm of messy, confusing feelings and put it squarely where it belongs, in the realm of behavioral science. Now, this is so critical because seeing it as a science instead of a romance is the very first step toward getting your power back. What you've experienced is not some mystery of the heart. It's a tactic. It is a deliberate conditioning schedule with a predictable and often devastating outcome.
So what is intermittent reinforcement really? Well, it's a conditioning schedule where rewards are given out completely randomly. This goes way back to a psychologist named B.F. Skinner. In his famous experiments, he noticed that if a pigeon got a food pellet every single time it pecked a disc, the moment the food stopped, the pigeon stopped pecking. Pretty simple. But if the food pellet came out randomly, sometimes after 1 peck, sometimes after 50, the pigeon would peck compulsively for hours, long after the rewards had stopped completely. Why? Because it never knew when the next one might come. And that's the key. The behavior becomes incredibly resistant to being unlearned.
And this is where it all clicks. Think about a vending machine. That's continuous reinforcement. You put your money in, you get your snack out. Every single time. If that machine stole your money twice in a row, you'd be done with it, right? You'd walk away and never use it again. The behavior dies fast. But intermittent reinforcement, that's a slot machine. Because the payout is random, your brain doesn't think, oh, it's broken. It thinks, well, okay, not this time, but maybe the next pull will be the jackpot. And that hope, which is fueled by the unpredictability, is what keeps you pulling that lever over and over again.
And this is where that neutral scientific principle gets twisted and turned into a weapon. In the context of a toxic relationship, this isn't happening by accident. It's a tactic. It's used to create addiction and deep dependency. The manipulator systematically mixes long, painful periods of devaluation, criticism, neglect, the silent treatment, with these sudden, unpredictable rewards of affection or kindness. A week of being ignored, followed by a passionate apology. Constant put-downs, followed by an expensive gift. This is a classic tactic used by individuals with narcissistic or borderline traits. And the goal is to turn your very natural hope for connection into a compulsive, desperate behavior. So listen, I really want this to sink in. If you have ever found yourself completely unable to leave a situation like this, it is not a sign of weakness. It is not a character flaw. You are not addicted to drama. You are experiencing the direct, predictable result of a scientifically optimized conditioning program. It's a program that is designed, whether consciously or not, to make you stay. It's a cruel twist, really. You've basically been trained to endure pain in the hope of a reward.
So how does this conditioning actually build a neurological addiction inside your brain? Well, the most powerful way to think about this is the slot machine. The psychological pull of a Vegas slot machine and a toxic relationship are shockingly similar, and it all boils down to one powerful little neurotransmitter, dopamine. Now, dopamine isn't just the pleasure chemical, it's the molecule of motivation, of wanting. It's what drives you to chase a goal. And intermittent reinforcement is the most effective way to hijack that entire system. This cycle right here, it shows you the addictive loop, step by step. It always starts with devaluation, the coldness, the abuse, It creates a state of deep emotional and even neurological craving for relief. Then, bam, out of nowhere, comes that unpredictable reward. And because it arrives unexpectedly after so much pain, your brain doesn't just release a little bit of dopamine, it releases a massive, intoxicating flood. That's the jackpot, the big win. It feels like salvation. And just like a gambler who hits the jackpot, your brain immediately wants that feeling again. Which leads to step 4, you start compulsively chasing that next win, tolerating more and more abuse in the desperate hope of getting another one of those incredible highs.
And here it is. This is the profound psychological shift that locks the cage. Your brain literally rewires its focus. The baseline reality of the relationship, the consistent neglect, the daily criticism, the 95% of the time that is just painful, all of that gets shoved into the background. Your brain starts to treat it like it's just irrelevant noise. The signal, the only thing your brain starts to fixate on, becomes the possibility of the next reward. You're no longer living in the reality of what is, you're living for the hope of what could be.
Okay, so we've got the brain chemistry down. Now let's zoom out and look at the psychology. What is actually going on in the minds of the two people in this dynamic? Because let me tell you, their goals, their experiences, their emotional investments, they aren't just different. They are completely and fundamentally opposed to each other. One person is playing a game of control, while the other is just fighting for their emotional survival.
This table just lays it out perfectly. Look at the manipulator side. The goal is maximum control with minimum emotional effort. By setting up this random reward schedule, they basically get the target to do all the work, all the chasing. They create dependency and hope, and then they just sit back. Now look at the target's side. They aren't playing a game at all. They're desperately trying to resolve this intense internal conflict. It's a full-time, exhausting mental job of trying to make sense of a reality that just doesn't add up. And to do that, they have to minimize the abuse and maximize the memory of the rewards.
And the engine driving all of this for the target is a powerful phenomenon called cognitive dissonance. This is that profound mental static, that stress you feel when you hold two contradictory ideas in your head at the same time. Like the belief, I am a smart, rational person, crashing into the behavior, I am staying in a relationship that makes me miserable. That contradiction is so uncomfortable that the brain will do almost anything to relieve the tension. It has to resolve the conflict.
And in this dynamic, these are the two conflicting realities at war inside the target's mind. Reality 1 is the cold, hard data, the consistent abuse, the neglect, the pain. Reality 2 is the hope, fueled by those random dopamine hits, the belief that this person is capable of great love, the person you saw in the beginning. Now, to resolve the painful dissonance between these two, the brain has a choice. It can accept the horrifying truth of reality 1, or it can cling to the hope of reality 2. And almost always, as a way to protect itself, the mind chooses to alter reality 1. It minimizes the abuse, makes excuses for it, and focuses all of its energy on the possibility of reality 2 coming back. So, the bottom line is that this dynamic is no longer just a bad relationship. It has been neurologically transformed into a full-blown emotional addiction. The brain pathways involved? The exact same ones we see in substance abuse. That's why leaving feels impossible. It's not just a sad breakup. It feels like chemical withdrawal. You get obsession, intense cravings, even physical sickness. You're literally fighting against your own brain chemistry, which is screaming at you to go back and pull the lever on that slot machine one more time.
Okay, that was the deep dive into the problem, the mechanics of the trap. Now we shift to the solution. Because understanding the mechanism is the essential first step. It allows you to move from blaming yourself to creating a strategy. Breaking this cycle isn't about having more willpower, it's about executing a strategic disengagement from the conditioning program. It's like a rescue mission for your own mind.
Here is your 3-step defense strategy. First, and this is the most important mental shift you can make, you must define the baseline. You have to consciously and deliberately label the consistent, day-to-day treatment as the true reality. The abuse is the truth, the kindness is the exception. Second, you have to stop the slot machine behavior. This means you must break the reward schedule, and the single most effective way to do this is by going no contact. And third, you have to rely on external validation. Your own brain is lying to you to reduce that dissonance. You need to talk to trusted friends, a therapist, or support groups, people who can be your anchor to reality and remind you of the true baseline when your mind starts to drift.
I want you to really ask yourself this question. If you can, try to look at the data of your relationship like a scientist. Maybe even write it down. What happens 95% of the time? What is the consistent, predictable pattern? That is the baseline. That is the truth of the relationship. The random rewards, as amazing as they might feel in the moment, are the outliers. They're the bait. They are not the reality.
This right here is the mantra to hold on to during that difficult process of withdrawal. Your brain has been trained to crave and chase the intensity of that dopamine high. The way out is to consciously retrain your brain to value consistency. A healthy, stable connection is built on a foundation of consistent respect and safety. It feels like a calm ocean, not a hurricane. Your new goal is to prioritize what is real and consistent over what is intense and random.
All right, we've covered the science, the psychology, and the strategy. Now let's bring it all together for the final crucial takeaway. After everything we've looked at, how do you ultimately win this unwinnable game? Well, the answer requires a fundamental shift in how you see the entire situation.
First, you have to internalize this truth on the deepest possible level. What you have experienced is not some complicated, passionate form of love. It is a scientifically proven conditioning pattern, documented in labs and used with devastating effect to create dependency. When you see it for what it is, a mechanism, not a mystery, it loses its power. It's not some magical hold they have over you. It's just a cheap and predictable psychological trick.
So, let's recap the whole thing. We've seen the addictive loop. That cycle of unpredictable rewards creates a dopamine hit that overrides rational thought, which leads to intense cognitive dissonance that traps you by forcing your brain to minimize the pain. But the lever to break this whole loop is incredibly powerful. It's awareness. Understanding this pattern is the key that unlocks the cage. It empowers you to take action, to consciously define the baseline as abuse, and then take that critical step of stopping the slot machine behavior. You break the addiction by breaking the reward schedule itself.
And this right here is the final, essential truth. You cannot outsmart the slot machine. You cannot figure out the pattern. You cannot hope that the next pull of the lever is going to be the one that changes everything and pays out forever. The machine is designed to make you lose. It's engineered to keep you hooked, feeding it your time, your energy, and your self-worth, one coin at a time. The only way to win is to recognize the game for what it is, turn around, and walk away.